worries about tomorrow. I'll look for answers in your face. And now I'm 3 songs from home. Where will this all end? Yeah, I'm a
Wow.
little old lady. I just look really good, so what can you
You
do?
look great. Well, I was just thinking your youngest is 28. I'm 33. So
Well, the thing is that my son is 31 and he's a
okay.
physicist. He got his PhD in physics at Drexel, and he's now doing robotics for agriculture out in Sacramento. And my daughter's an
Oh,
environmental
wow.
engineer, and they both went to high school in Warrenton. I mean, the kids grew up in Warrenton most of the time, so that's how I knew Rappahannock. I mean, I know Rappahannock. I mean, I've dated several guys from Rappahannock, believe it or not. And that's
Believe it
part
or
of the
not.
story of the song about Rappahannock County. I'll tell you about that. That's an interesting
Yes, I want
story.
to hear all about it. Shall we start like David Copperfield? I was born, I grew.
Yeah, well, we can and I can tell you a little bit about my history and what I'm actually doing master classes now on intuition and music. So
I
it's
saw
really
that.
interesting, some of the stuff that I've gone through. And I'm gonna, you're not recording yet?
I'm recording, but we don't need to
Okay,
officially
because
like I
I'm
mean, if you're
60,
ready, we can.
yeah, I am. I'm 69 years old.
Wow.
I know. Look, but I've been sober 34 years. So that's the reason I look this good, because I got sober and before I had my children, and I take really good care of myself, as far as self-care and all that stuff. And it's made a big difference. I mean, most people my age don't look like me. So,
So it's like a combination of physical self-care, but also, I mean, you never gave up. Speaking of moms and working, a lot of times when you become a mom, people are like, "Oh, that's it." Like you're just going to
well,
be a mom, which is an important task, but at the same time, or not an important task, but important
it's the most
creative
important job
work.
in the world. Motherhood is
Yes.
the most important job in the world. And it was my favorite job. And what I had to do, and I'm going to tell you the truth, you cannot nurse and rock at the same time. I'm just going to say it's just the way it is. You can't nurse and rock at the same time. So I became a children's musician while my kids were young. And I worked in
Smart.
Montessori, and I did, my best audience was 5 years old, and I worked with little guys for many years. And then, but I came back into the music business as an older person, and we'll talk about that some more, if you'd like. But
Yes, I want to talk about all of it.
okay, well, and I
Absolutely.
brought my guitar, which is right here. So if you want me to play
Yes.
something, I can do that too. So,
Yes, I'd love for you to play.
okay.
Um, let's talk about where you grew up. Let's talk about you've got your new the man with the camera stops time,
Hmm.
right? That
Hmm.
line is just, it means so many things, I'm sure to you, but to your audience members and to people who hear that lyric. It's true though, right? I mean, you hear that and it resonates because you look back at old photographs and you try and figure out who is that person? Who was that
Right,
person?
right.
How do I relate to that person now? So going from that and then thinking about the beginning of your roots here on earth and as a musician, tell me a little bit more about that, please.
Okay. Well, I had a very amazing childhood. My father was a lawyer in the Air Force from Atlanta, Georgia, and he had gone to Duke University and to Emory University. And we moved to North Africa, to Morocco, when I was about 2.5 years old, and lived there for 2.5 years. And it really changed my father. And we came back to the Washington area. He was working at the Pentagon, and my mother took us to a picnic at the Methodist Church, and they wouldn't let black people in. And so we went across the street to the Unitarian Church where they let black people in, and we became Unitarian back. I was in like the first, second grade. And my father decided to go back to school and become a Unitarian minister. It's now Unitarian Universalism, but then it was just Unitarian. And so he ended up going to St. Lawrence University in upstate New York. So we moved up there for a couple of years. But then we came back to the Washington area. And my father actually got his degree at Howard University, which is a predominantly all black school. And he was the only white man in his class in theology as getting a theology degree in the 60s. And he became a civil rights activist and was the minister at the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church in Alexandria, Virginia. And he was in Selma, Alabama. We heard a Unitarian minister had been murdered, a white one, and it was my father's friend Jim. Dad had gone one way, he'd gone another. I was in the 6th grade. So I grew up in a sort of a radical, liberal environment. And I had the honor of attending Martin Luther King's funeral. My father brought us down we were up in Boston at the time, and my father brought us down for the funeral. We have pictures of it from CNN where you can see my dad and everything. So that was my childhood, as well as my father then became an anti-war activist and wrote a book against the war in Vietnam. So you can imagine that folk music was a big part of that scene, because that was
Absolutely.
how Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Mike Seeger and Pete Seeger. And I got to go up. Our choir director at the Unitarian Church was the head of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival at the time, and they took it to Montreal, and I got to go because I spoke French because I'd lived in Africa, and ended up getting to play with people like John Hartford and Vassar Clemens and Bill Danoff, who wrote Country Roads with John Denver. They were all up there that summer. I was 19. So this is so exciting. I'm getting to hang with all the cool people and do this really fun job. And I went to Hofstra University. I was 16 when I went to college. And I was in my dorm room, and a guy came up. And back in those days, they had a thing called A&R, which they still have, but they don't use it much, where people come around looking for artists. And he heard me playing in my dorm room and said, "Want to make a record?" And I said, okay. Went into Manhattan, because I was at Hofstra, which is in Long Island, near the city. And I ended up getting signed by a guy named Bobby Darin, who, if you're from the 50s, he's pretty famous back then, Mac the Knife and that sort of thing. And because he wanted to be a folk singer, but he was connected with, all of the sort of Copacabana, the whole fancy Italian, Frank Sinatra, that kind of crowd. We won't go into the details of that. But anyway, they did not want him to be a folk singer. So he signed me, and I got to play with John Lennon's band, Elephant's Memory, did my demos. So it was really exciting. And I was at Chapel Music, and guess what happened? He died. Oh. 6 months after I was signed, he had a heart condition from childhood. He'd had rheumatic fever, and he was like 36 when he died, very young. So my early career was going to be, they were grooming me to be like Stevie Nicks, Linda Ronstadt, that kind of thing. And guess what? It didn't happen because he died. There's nothing more final than that, So I had a 3-year writing gig at Chapel Music, and it's now Warner Chappell. They're the largest publisher in the world. And they were doing, working with everyone. And I got lost in the shuffle. I did songs and movies. I had a few things happen. But what was cool was we ended up making a record at night in the in-house studio. In those days, there was no such thing as a home studio. I mean, everybody has them now, but they didn't have them. And so Chapel had its own studio, which was where people came to do their demos. So people like Lionel Hampton or Paul Schaefer from David Letterman's band would come and do his demos there. The Brecker brothers, James Brown. I got to meet James Brown. All these
You're
famous
kidding.
people.
Oh my gosh.
And,
what was that like?
Hall & Oates were there and blah, blah, blah. And so I dated the bass player from Hall & Oates for a minute. But anyway, I ended up working with Kid Creole and the Coconuts. They did their first album in this demo studio at Chapel. And they were a pretty famous band back then, and I did their first album. So I get a lot of credentials over in England and in South America because they were really popular over there. Not so much here, but anyway, all that happened, and it was just the music business was tough for women back then. You think it's bad now? Oh my God. Yes, you had to have a mentor. And the first time I went in the studio, it was with Elephant's Memory. They were going to be doing my demos. It was these 2 engineers, older guys with little gray ponytails. And they said, "Hey, your father got money?"
Wow.
No.
That was your introduction?
That was my introduction. "Your father got money? Who's your boyfriend?" there was never a question that I might be a talented artist who was there to do work. It was who was put, what man was doing it for you. And that's the way it was for everyone. I mean, that's why I've always loved Madonna, because Madonna has, she said, oh, we have to do this. Okay, I'm going to do it out loud, noisy, and just tell everybody. And she really helped women to step into their own space and be on their own. But I had the privilege of working with all kinds of wonderful, backup singers and people that, and I thought that was normal. I thought everybody could play that well. I thought everybody could sing that well. I was surprised when I moved to Virginia. It wasn't quite the same level. And so I moved to, I got tired of the whole thing. I got divorced. I had a broken heart. I was a mess, and came down to Virginia to stay with my parents. My father was the minister at this time at Reston, in Reston, Virginia, at the Unitarian Church there. And I'm going to be here 2 weeks. And of course, I ended up marrying my drummer, and we were in a band together. We went over to Athens, Greece, and made an album over there, and did a bunch of stuff.
How exotic.
That was really fun. And then we decided to get married, and I've had 2 children who I mentioned, my son and daughter. My son is a physicist, and my daughter is an environmental engineer. And thank God they're both in science. And I'm very proud of them. And my ex-husband is a delight, and he's happily remarried, and we get along. We co-parented. So, I was very lucky in the people I've chosen to be in my life, as far as personal. But when we started talking earlier, I don't know if this will be on the tape, but you mentioned about motherhood. And
yes,
motherhood is my favorite job. I've never had more fun. I loved when they were little. Because I was older when I had my kids, and I had sown every wild oat there was to sow. I was just so grateful to be able to be home. My ex-husband was an air traffic controller, so he could afford for me to basically stay home. I did children's music part-time. I was the tax write-off. And so I still did music, but I was able to spend a lot of time with my kids, and ended up doing children's music in schools for many years, and in Montessori environment. And I think it's so important to prioritize your children. It doesn't mean you give up music, but what you do is you find the music that will support the family life rather than the other way around. And at least for women, it should be that way for men and women, and all non-binary folks as well, for everybody. But
right.
It isn't always. So, my suggestion is, if you're a musician yourself and you want to do this, is to find a way that that the bus can bring the kids along a little bit, which is more true in country music. It's easier for that. But I don't know. That's my childhood. I had a phenomenal childhood. It was really crazy and really exciting and very artistic. And, I did get a college degree, so I was able to get jobs occasionally. And I've been a musician my whole life. I've just always, that's what I've always done. I haven't always made a living, and thank God, for alimony. That's funny. I shouldn't say that, but oh well, But thank God for support where it's come in. And the other side of that, well, do you want to talk about any of this, or where are you with all this?
Well, first of all, I'm just totally blown away. I mean, it's just like, I want to thank you.
I'm going to just tell
thank
you,
you for for agreeing to come on Rappahannock Radio, because it's like, you're a veteran. In so many ways. For mothers, for singer-songwriters, for folk musicians, for women in music. Let's start with that, with your experience. Let's delve into that a little bit more. Your experience of being a woman in music, and how you mentioned that you loved how Madonna created a space for women, tried to hold space so they could have a little bit more control over their creativity, and how they put themselves into their art form. So how did you maintain that? Of course, going in right at first, they're like, oh, does your daddy have money? Who are you dating? What's your connection? How did you respond to that? And then how did you grow, yourself in strength with through that experience?
Okay, I always considered it guerrilla warfare. You had to pretend that other people were in charge beside yourself because that's
Make them
what it
think.
was. Make them think it was their idea. And I was pretty, and I was white, and I was from a prominent family. So I had all kinds of privilege. And that's just the truth. And I never hide that because I'm very grateful that I had it, but that was the situation. And to tell you the truth, I think one of the reasons that I didn't become more famous back when I was younger is that I couldn't stand that whole thing. I was raised by a liberal family that was like, you can be anything you want, you can do what you want. And that did not turn out to be the truth. And so, but I had the support of a family and loving friends, so that when it got really hard, I went home. I went back to Virginia, and and I was in a band. I joined a band immediately and played in Alexandria, and then had a little townhouse and have a little job, and played and did whatever. Ended up getting married, and then I became a children's musician. And so I found a way to do my music so that I didn't ever have to compromise my personal self in order to do it. But I was very privileged that way. A lot of women don't have that option. You look at people like Tina Turner and what she had to go through. Tina had to go through hell in half of Georgia to get, out of out of what she, what she went through. It was really, really tough. For people of color, it was really, really hard. And but also, I knew women who were in sort of executive positions at Chapel and things like that. And there was it was a show for one season on, I think it was on HBO, called Vinyl, that was put on by I think Mick Jagger helped produce it. He and his son was in it. And all these people were going, oh, it's so over the top. It's never really like that. Oh, yes, it was just like that. There was, New York in the 70s, lots of drugs, lots of crazy, and but women's value, we hadn't really figured it all out, and so it was very difficult. But today, the good news is, as an older artist, I am not selling myself in the way that I had to do when I was young. Let's be honest. So much of what we buy in terms of music is sexual. It's just part of the deal. It's not the whole deal. But the cool thing is that if you become a folk singer, which is what I moved into the folk market when I got older. And first of all, they're gentler on age because, folk singers can be older, which is so kind of awesome. It's not as, It's more focused on social justice. It's more focused on causes rather than focused on how cute you are, which is what pop music's all about, having the look, and especially with the internet and with everything, the way things are now. There's no such thing as just putting out a record and somebody playing your song a bunch of times and you make money and that's that. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's how many likes you get, all the various things that go along with that. So it's been a real interesting, when I came back in the music business, I was in my late 50s and I was divorced, or I was getting a divorce, and I thought, and I don't really mean this, so don't anyone take this wrong, but it's a kind of a joke. I could either kill myself, buy a new car, or make a record. Those were my choices. And I decided to make a record. And I called in
Good
friends.
choice.
I thought so. But we had a recording studio in our basement. At that point, people had home studios, and we had a recording studio. And so I called in friends from the old days, like Larry Williams. He's Al Jarreau's arranger and won a bunch of Grammys, and his wife Denise is a girlfriend of mine, and he played on my record, and a bunch of Jeff Severson played on my record, a bunch of really great musicians. Jeff's from Rappahannock, and
okay,
and he played on, beautiful, and I did this record called Been There, and it got nominated for a Washington Air Music Award for Best Country Record, and I was like, I guess I'm back in the music business. I no. Because when I got divorced, I started dating again. So I started writing about dating as an older person. And, and the songs were, also I wrote a song called Why, which was about like, why did you leave me? A bunch of those country kind of breakup songs.
Trying to understand.
Yeah, and trying to figure it out. And also some, I write about recovery because that's, part of who I am is a sober person.
Right. You mentioned you were, well, recovery, I guess. What do you mean by that? Because, I mean, you said that you've been sober for 34 years.
I got sober in 1987. And it was
What
right
led
after
you
I
to
got
that?
married and before I had my kids. Because alcohol and drugs had never been very good to me. I wasn't, like, I didn't love it. I quit taking drugs and hard liquor when I was 21 because I knew it was going to kill me. I just wasn't, I'm a little person. I reacted badly. I just didn't like it. But I didn't know wine would hurt me. I'd never heard of recovery programs. I didn't know anything about them. So, I just thought I'll be okay. I'll just drink wine and I'll be okay. But eventually that got bad. And so I quit drinking in 87. I didn't go to a rehab or anything. There wasn't as much of that back then. There was some, but it wasn't a big known thing. But a girlfriend of mine had gotten sober and she said, wouldn't it be nice not to have to think about it? And I went,
Yeah.
wow, to not have to plan the hangover, which was kind of what I was all about. Can I sleep in the next day, and what's going to happen? And also I was happily married, and I didn't want anything bad to happen because
Right.
with girls, bad things can happen if you drink too much. So anyway, I gave it all up, and I've been sober ever since. And I got sober before I had my kids. So, and it's been awesome. I love sobriety. I've really enjoyed it, and but many of my songs reflect it. I wrote a song for Philip Seymour Hoffman when he died of a heroin overdose, after 23 years of sobriety, which is called Nothing Changes, If Nothing Changes. So, he had, it's hard. It's not an easy disease to overcome, but I was very lucky. I got sober young. I didn't have a lot of health problems. And also I don't suffer from other illnesses. A lot of people do. And so it's harder for them. So I consider I'm just really lucky. But some of my songs reflect that kind of work, about helping people to look at themselves and, see if it's something they need to do, so that's part of who I am.
Excellent. I want to ask you, so, I mean, spending so much time around musicians, and artists often have addiction problems.
Right.
Why do you, I mean, in your experience, why does that seem to go hand in hand with creativity? Or do you think it's just an overall human problem and, there's a lot of musicians and you just see it there too? I mean, do you think
it's an overall human problem, but I also think that the business of music and the being an artist requires highs and lows as a person that regular people in regular jobs don't have quite that same kind of demand on them emotionally. And, things like the reason I used to drink wine was to come down from a show. I would be doing a show and I would be done at 2 a.m. and I would want to go to sleep and I wouldn't be able to sleep. So you drink some wine and it helps you go to sleep. It's when you can't stop that it's the problem. When it becomes an addiction, that's when it's the problem. And people use drugs and alcohol and men and shopping and all the other things that we do that are addictive to sort of not feel the way we're feeling. They want to change the way they feel. And a lot of time artists, we have a hard time. There's not financial support in America for artists. Well, I'm talking about musicians.
Right.
Well, it's also true in the painting, potters, for gosh sakes, none of us, we're not supported in the way that some other countries are more supportive. So it's difficult, and poverty is hard on everyone. And so, you're having to hustle. And so the lifestyle makes it much more probable that you're going to abuse alcohol and drugs. You won't necessarily become an addict, but it's much more likely that you're going to not take real good care of yourself when you're younger. And so it kills a lot of people. It killed Janis Joplin. It killed Jimi Hendrix. My girlfriend used to date Jimmy back in the day. And she was a little bit
Did you
older.
meet Jimmy?
No, I did not. But, I met Ricky. She dated Jimmy back in the day. And,
Yeah.
but, I was a big fan of those artists from the 60s. I was a little bit younger, but they influenced my work. They helped me create, they're the reason I became a songwriter, because I'm a storyteller by trade. That's just who I am. I tell stories. My songs are just little stories, and they come up. And but I'm lucky enough I can sing, and also I was trained. I started playing piano when I was 5. I had classical training, and then I started playing guitar when I was 14, I think. And that's mostly what I play now. But although I've been playing classical piano again because I got a keyboard that has weighted keys. So
oh, nice. That makes such a difference.
yeah.
Right?
So I've been back. My daughter's a classical pianist and quite talented. She studied at UVA and is a real good player. So she gave me some of her middle books that aren't too hard. So I'm going back to playing again classical, which is a different part of the brain than the creative side for composition, at least in my opinion. So that's kind of how I've been doing. And I just got a new album came out in November.
Yes.
So that was exciting.
And that's had great success.
It has. My last 3 albums have been top 10 on the folk charts.
Wow.
2015, 2019, and 2021. And I'll give it up. The reason why is Carrie Estrin, who is my manager. She's got 50 years in the business. She managed Tony Rice and Suzanne Vega. She worked with. She helped she founded Southeast Regional Folk Alliance, and she helped me to focus my work into the folk market. I did not understand the markets when I came back in the music business. It wasn't the same at all. When I was young, it was one way, and I was like folk rock, Linda Ronstadt, that kind of thing was what was big. And then you had Steely Dan and that sort of stuff. But now folk is different than country, and I was just listening to this thing on NPR about pop punk, which is a new thing, like pop punk or punk pop, I don't know what they call it. But I love punk rock, but I'm thinking the Clash and back in the day,
the Ramones the
Ramones. I knew them. I knew those guys, and in New York, and and I got to meet Mick Jagger and everything. It was fun being.
It was a whirlwind. I mean, it's just like, how did you? Gosh, I have so many questions I want to ask you. I want to ask you when you wrote your first song and what got you into songwriting.
Okay, I was like 15. We moved to Boston, actually to Lexington, Massachusetts. My father was the minister up there just for a couple of years. And we were on White's Pond, which is right near Walden Pond, and we're in New England. And I wanted to learn how to Travis pick. Do you know what Travis pick is? Okay,
no, I don't.
I'll show you. The Travis pick is a style of picking that was very popular back in the day. It still is. And it's basically thumb, 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 finger, thumb, finger. So I spent my entire summer doing, here, I'll hold it up so people can see. If I don't know if this is going to be out.
Yeah, you can see. Yeah, that's better.
So this is a Travis pick. Like that. That's Travis Pickett. So that's what Dylan was doing. Everybody was doing it. And so what I ended up, so I spent my summer in my basement at this house while they were getting our house ready, learning how to Travis pick. And so I learned how to play the way that Gordon Lightfoot played, the way that, that was like what everybody was doing. And so I wrote my first song. Well, the first song was had like rainbows and, it was pretty bad.
I'm sure it wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. I was young. But the first song I wrote, I actually got a deal on, which goes like this. I'm so sick of waiting for you to say goodbye. I wish you'd really go and leave me here to cry. Each night you slam the door and say you won't be back again. I wish you'd mean it. I don't want to go through that again. That's the first verse. Back then we didn't have verses and choruses. It went straight through. But that was the first song that I wrote that I got, it's one of the songs that helped me get a deal, a publishing deal at Tevel. So that was it.
Wow. What do you mean by back then we didn't have, so how did you construct a song? Like what is
it was mostly like a folk song, like Joan, if you listen to a lot of Joan Baez's early records, or if you listen to any kind of music that comes from 17th and 18th century, it's just storytelling, and it doesn't have a verse and a chorus usually. Every once in a while it'll have a chorus, but it's just repetitive. It's just verses. It's just
it's like the same 3 chords or
yeah.
same 4
chords. And it's the same 3 chords. Um, let's see. If I were a carpenter and you were a lady, would you marry me anyway? Would you have my baby? That just repeats. If a tinker were my trade, will you? Now, there is a break of that. Save my love for loneliness, save my love for sorrow, giving you my loneliness, come give me your tomorrow. Those are old folk songs, and they tend to be just straight up, 3-chord, 1, 4, 5, and you're done. But when I went to chapel, I started writing with other writers a little bit and developing choruses and writing pop music. Now, pop music has its hook is everything. Do you know what a hook is?
Yeah, it's the catchy
like
part.
The hook, whatever gets in there. Now, it can be melodic, it can be lyrical, it can be whatever you want it to be. But you need a strong hook for pop music, and whatever it happens to be. Like my girl, talking about my girl. Great hook right there. So you just learn how to develop a song around that, and you need musical, But I do a lot of folk and bluegrass, and they just use capos, and so you don't even, if you know C, G, and F, you're pretty good. You don't need a whole lot of chords. You might need a seventh or a drop D or
something different in there.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a fan of bar chords then?
No, not really, because my hands are really
okay, good.
I have tiny little hands, and so bar chords have always been hard for me. I can play them. I don't love them, but I can play them. And I don't use a flat pick. I use a thumb pick. I use National Steel banjo picks. I've been using them since I was a kid because I used to bite my fingernails when I was a kid. I don't do that anymore. I go to them. I get manicures, but.
So you have an incentive not to mess them up.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly why I started doing that. But then I'm going to promote this. This is a Blue Chip thumb pick. Blue Chip makes the best flat picks and thumb picks. Just look them up. They're phenomenal. They're expensive, but worth it. They changed my playing because this thumb pick, it's got some sort of a composite for the part that sticks out, but this part's metal, and so it doesn't slip. And so I was using plastic thumb picks, and they would slip, and I would have to be moving them like this. But anyway, this speeded up my play, and I was able to play better. So I've been using them. I go to Gray Fox Bluegrass Festival every year. I perform there on the family stage. Have been for about the last 8 or 9 years. I'll be there this year. I'm excited, and because they've been down for 2 years because of COVID, but they're back. And I met the Blue Chip guys up there, so they're great.
How did COVID affect your playing and your performing and your writing? I mean, what's your take on that? What's your personal?
I ended up going up. My cousin Susan has a mountain house up in Ellijay, Georgia, and we've got 27 acres and bees, and we've got chickens, and we've got everything. So my cousin Susan and her wife and me, we basically stayed up there for all of the isolation component of COVID to stay, because we're all little old ladies and we didn't want to get it. We got vaccinated and everything as soon as we could, but at first we didn't have that. And so I was up there in the mountains by myself, and that's when I wrote the song for David Goodman, which is the title track of the new album, because I was talking to him on the phone. We went to college together, and he was sort of our traveling photographer for all of our theater stuff, because I went to school for theater in New York. And so we were kidding around, and he said, write a song about me, like kidding around, and he's New York, so I talk like this. And I said, all right. And so that's how I wrote the song, The Man with the Camera Stops Time. And I have a video out now. It's a lyric video, which is out. And it's all black and white pictures that David took from the 70s. And it's sort of like a little snapshot of the period. So if you get a chance, it's on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. You can check that out. It's real cool because he's a phenomenal photographer. And still, like, he does Fashion Week in New York, and he's a phenomenal photographer and is still quite well known in New York. But these were all from when we were kids in college and, doing plays and, all the things we did. And they're all in black and white. So it's kind of cool.
So everybody can find that. There's links to all of your social media on brooksiewells.com.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my YouTube channel is there.
We want everybody to go there.
Yeah, everybody should go there. That's absolutely true. So anyway.
Tell me more about going to school for theater.
Oh, well,
why
what
you chose
happened
to do
was
that and how that was.
when I lived in Alexandria, when my father had done the civil rights activism thing, and we moved, we lived at a place called the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church in Alexandria, Virginia. And it's an old estate, and there was a theater company on the property. And so we would, from the time I was 12, we would just be all the extras and everything because we were kids. I always tell the story. One day we moved there. I was in the 6th grade, and it was like moving to fairyland because it was an old estate that the church had bought, and it had all this acre. It was beautiful. You know, I'm like living in a magic fairyland. And you go outside, and this lady's going, "Come here." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "We're making glass scales for the dragon for Turandot." I mean, this is my afternoon. We're going to make glass scales for the dragon. You know, like
Wow.
perfect. And so I did theater, and also we had a wonderful high school drama teacher who was phenomenal there. Then we moved to Boston, and I could sing, so I got the lead in the high school play and that kind of thing. I did South Pacific. So my sister had gone to Hofstra University for theater, and I had changed schools, so I was able to skip 12th grade. I skipped 1st grade and 12th grade, so I was 16 when I went to college. So I was very young.
Wow.
Yeah, and my family, that's another thing. My family is mostly gifted people, and I talk about this because it sounds like bragging, but what I learned, I worked with a guy named Andy Mahoney who does a lot of work with people underachievement in the gifted. And what happens is your brain is a Ferrari and the brakes don't work very well. So when you're in a normal learning environment, it's difficult. You get bored, you run, you know, a lot of people act out, a lot of things happen. So I did it back in my day. I mean, I went to 1st grade when I was 5, and I mean, anyway, I went to college when I was 16 and graduated when I was 20. You know, I got a 4-year degree, and Hofstra is well known for its theater department. People like Francis Ford Coppola went there, Madeline Kahn, and it was really well known also for providing a lot of technical theater people, a lot of stage managers who run Broadway and things like that went to Hofstra. And so I went there for theater and expected to come out and go to New York and become an actress, but instead I got signed as a musician, you know, as a songwriter. And what my daddy always used to say is, "Go through doors that open." And nobody was begging me to play Lady Macbeth, and I'm only 5 feet tall, so that's also a problem. But but I was lucky enough, you know,
a
so
comedian.
I worked with the music, and you know, that was kind of. I almost went into fashion. I love fashion, and I have a hashtag putting the fashion back in folk because a lot of folk singers don't dress well. God bless them; they don't care. And so I love fashion. I worked at Saks Fifth Avenue. My first job in New York was at Saks Fifth Avenue, right there across from 30 Rock. So that was fun.
So, I mean, how did you keep your wits about you in this? I mean, so you go to college super early. Obviously, you know, you consider you a savant, right? So, I mean, you've got that weight on your shoulders already of, you know, keep that up and make sure that you continue on that road of greatness. And then, you know, Bobby Darin basically, you know, quote unquote, discovers you, right? And so it's like this very empowering, you know, however many, what is it, a span of how many years there between 16
I was in New York, and well, I started college in 1969. So, and I was in New York until 79. So like a 10-year span that I, you know, doing music of one sort or another. Finished college in 73. And then I married my first husband. In New York, we used to call him a starter spouse. I had one of those. And he was delightful, lovely man, but I should not have been married. Anyway, we spent a year. My story always sounds like I'm making it up, but it's all true.
No, it doesn't. I believe you, and I.
Well, it was crazy.
I guess.
Yeah, and you know, I got to work with some really cool people, but it was very hard on me emotionally. I was not spiritually fit. I didn't have any of that going for me. What I did have going for me was a strong family that loved me. And so when things got really hard, I moved back to Virginia. My parents actually came and got me, you know, because I was just a wreck. And also, you know, drugs and alcohol played a part in that. I was still, you know, having problems with with that sort of thing, and I was surrounded by all of that. You know, the scene in New York back then. People did a lot of heroin back then too. I luckily didn't, but there was a lot. You know, it was after the Vietnam War. It was really insane, and I just remember feeling like I may just have to. Going to have to leave eventually. After when I was no longer married and I was on my own and I was having to like get jobs to. I ran a shop that sold ballet shoes to the Joffrey with Doria Reagan, who married Ronald Reagan's son, Ronnie Reagan, who's a big guy on TV now.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah, that was his wife. He married Doria, and we ran this store in the village, you know, selling ballet shoes to make money. You know, you had to eat. So you'd get a job, and then you'd play in bands at night, and I'd play with different people. I got to play with all kinds of really great players who I'm still friends with today, like Robbie Condor. He married Carole King's daughter. And then his son Dylan was just in that Jesus Christ Superstar that was on television. That's Carole King's grandson. So you know,
oh, wow.
I got to. Robbie was in a band with me, and another guy, Jerry Holland, had like Song of the Year for John Michael Montgomery, great songwriter, and he now lives in San Francisco, is married, and his wife's a jazz singer. So I got to meet all kinds of great players, and there was support, but there really. You know, I was pretty insane, to be frank. And your 20s in New York, at that period, most of us were. So I left kind of in a basket.
Did you leave?
Yeah.
Sorry,
I just left.
So when Bobby Darin died, or
when Bobby Darin died, I was
longer?
still signed, and so I stayed for several. No, I stayed in New York for several years after that, and we did Kid Creole. We did the Kid Creole album. And then we had a couple other bands that we were working on, and we had, you know, we're trying to get signed with the bands and this sort of, you know, all the stuff everybody does. But eventually I was beginning to just get crazier and crazier emotionally, just not handling it very well. And that's when I was living in basically a closet in the Upper East Side at that point. And I was not sleeping. I was a mess. And I called my parents and said, "Can you come get me?" And they said, "Can you get on a train?" I went, "I don't think so." They came and got me and brought me to Virginia, and my dad was in Reston at the time. And then my friend Tommy Meckling, who passed away recently, he's a mandolin player. He said, "Come get in a band." So I got in a band in Virginia and started playing in Virginia. And then I eventually met my husband Sven, who is the father of my kids, and that's when we went to Athens to make a record. And I just always was in bands. You know, you just get in bands. So that's what I did.
When in coming back to Virginia, when did you come to Rappahannock County?
Oh, that was in the 90s. Okay. What happened was I had had my kids. My son was born in 90, and my daughter was born in 93, and that was in Reston. I was living in Reston, and we were looking for a bigger house, and Reston's real expensive. We had a townhouse in Reston. Right. We wanted a bigger house. So I had gone out, and I was doing children's music, and I had performed at oh, wait a minute, hold on. You know Tim Dingus? He owns the music store in Warrenton, and he owns Gloria's. Yeah. You know, the place where you play Gloria's? They're so nice. Anyway, I did a children's show on first night. You know, it was like they had first night. It was real fun, and it was beautiful, like all the lights and everything. I thought, maybe we should move here. And so I moved there right before 9/11, actually. And I actually was in Manhattan for 9/11, which was not fun. And
I'm sure.
We lost it.
Wow.
Yeah, my husband was an air traffic controller too, so it was we didn't have it. We lost a whole family in the plane that hit the Pentagon. Friends of ours that a little girl, she had my children's music with her on the plane, and I had to sing at the funeral. That was really kind of tough. You know, it wasn't. And my sister was the minister, so you know, my sister Barbara's a Unitarian Universalist minister, and we had to step up for the family. There were two little girls, and they were moving to Australia, and the flight anyway. They were on the flight that hit the Pentagon, so they all died, and I had to sing "Puff the Magic Dragon" to a bunch of first graders, you know, because it was a funeral, and you know, that's the kind of stuff that you realize how important music is, you know, what it means, and how. It was very difficult. I've also done hospitals where kids, I sing burn victims, things like that. And you can go cry in the car, but you don't cry you keep it together for
Right.
the kids.
You're the pillar of
Yeah.
strength there. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that, like you said, that's the kind of stuff that, so, I mean, for adults, music, I feel like you hear the lyrics and you hear somebody's experience, and either, it resonates with you or it doesn't, or you feel inspired by it because you want to be, in the position they're talking about, or you've been in their position, like you said, been there.
Hmm.
And you're like, okay, wow, they totally get this, and they've been able to basically distill it down into this emotional experience into a song. But it's interesting because you said for the kids, what, Puff the Magic Dragon, such an interesting choice, because how do you speak to their emotions without going, you want to explain what's happening, but not too much. It's a very delicate
Well, with little guys, the whole truth
balance.
I learned, I'm pretty good with little guys. And I think that the main thing is that you have to be honest within their concept of what's going on. So, for example, I have
Right.
a thing that I call the Santa Claus rule. If they still believe in Santa Claus, then the line between truth and fiction isn't clear yet for them. So you need to be as open as you can, but you don't put on them concepts that they're going to take personally or blame themselves for and stuff like that.
Right.
But the other song that I did for the funeral was called Love Grows. It was written by a UU minister. And it's love grows one by one, two by two, and four by four. Love grows round like a circle, comes back knocking at your front door. Beautiful. And they can do the motions. So you just engage at the level that
Yeah.
they're comfortable with. And but never condescend. It's not
Yeah.
children can feel it if you're not being honest with them. So you just have to
Right.
be really
Yes, they can.
real. And I've always loved that age group. It's just fun to work with. And but it was very, very difficult because we were all in, collective mourning for what had happened at 9/11. You're too young to really have been, it was really
I
tough.
Yeah, I mean, but my memory of it is waking up to my mother saying, "You need to get up and you need to get," because I was homeschooled,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's like, "You need to get up and you need to get up now,"
Mm-hmm.
and going downstairs and looking at the television
Mm-hmm.
and trying to understand what exactly all of that meant. I think I'm born in '89, so I guess I would have been like 11, 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, can I
and
say?
ironically,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, see, that was my experience with John F. Kennedy's assassination. I was
Right.
in the 6th grade when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And they made an announcement over, and school stopped and everything stopped. That was, so see, I have had more than one experience. My mother's was Pearl Harbor. My mother was born in 1927. So the World War, when we joined World War II, Pearl Harbor is her
World shaking event,
shaking
life
event.
shaking.
And
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy's assassination was the first. But then we went through, Martin Luther King. I mean, because my father was an activist, so we were part of the movement. There, we were there for that. But the Kennedy one was intense, and then 9/11, of course, was the next big one like that, which was very hard. And plus, we lost a whole family. And plus, my husband was an air traffic controller, so that was, they had to get every plane out of the air. It was crazy, what was going on. So
Yeah, the stress he
the
was
stress was,
enduring.
and I had been in Manhattan, and I got stuck in Manhattan, couldn't get home. So I was with my girlfriend Annie, whose husband was head of HBO at the time, and we were stuck in Manhattan. We had to come. It took us 3 days to get home. Me and my girlfriend Donna, and it was wild. It was wild.
Having been someone who's lived through these different events, I mean, and now, I mean, watching what happened, at the beginning of 2020, in March of 2020, where, we declare the national emergency
Yep.
with COVID and everything going on. So, I mean, how do you continue to roll with the punches, so to speak, not just personally, but I mean, universally, globally? What is your remedy? Is it your music?
Part of it is the music, but it's also the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The key to longevity is that I have got a little bit more wisdom to know the difference. So I no longer try to fix things what I do is I find out what's going on. I don't spend all day watching the TV and and being mad at politicians who I don't like. Is there something I can do? Can I be of service? And if I can be of service, then I go be of service. If I can't, then I just enjoy my day. Because, like, for example, today here in Atlanta, the weather's like 68 degrees. Now, I know that's a global warming problem. I get it, but it is a nice day, and I'm going to enjoy it because the weather's beautiful today. And it was pouring down rain this morning, so that's the kind of thing. And, I write songs about that sort of thing, but I have a song off my album, Been There. Can I play you a song?
Yes,
Would you like
please.
to hear a song?
Yes.
Let me just check my tuning because I tune because I care as an acoustic musician. Oh.
Yes. I know. My father taught me that as a musician. He said, always check your tuning. Don't go too far. Get too excited without checking the tuning.
Well, anyway, this is a song I wrote quite a few years ago when I first it was on my album, Been There, when I first got back in the music business. But this is my sort of, it is kind of a recovery song. And it goes like this. I went to the chapel and said me a prayer, but I don't know if anyone heard. I lit up a votive, examined my motives, feeling just a little absurd. And I've been trying so hard to give unconditional love. But it doesn't come easy for someone like me, broken and battle-scarred. I went to the forest and lit me a fire, and I sat there watching it burn. I thought about somebody losing a loved one who doesn't know which way to turn. And I've been trying so hard to give unconditional love. But it doesn't come easy for someone like me, broken and battle-scarred. Whoever said it was easy, they were telling you lies. Whoever said it was easy, not I. I went to the doctor to get a prescription, something to settle my nerves. But it did not help me, just fueled my addiction and ended up making it worse. And I've been trying so hard to give unconditional love. But it doesn't come easy for someone like me, broken and battle-scarred. Whoever said it was easy, they were telling you lies. Whoever said it was easy, not I. Never said it was easy. I wouldn't tell you no lies. Whoever said it was easy, not I.
It's so inspiringly sorrowful. It's like,
well, that's the thing is that it's not easy. No one said it was easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Our life's journey is tough. If it wasn't difficult, there are hills and valleys. It doesn't have to be constant misery. I've had a wonderful life. My children are healthy and happy today. They've had troubles, but they've come through them and they've survived. My ex-husband is happily married. That's a miracle, and it's great because, you don't have to be miserable about the way life has gone. Life goes the way it goes, and you accept and work on, accept that I'm powerless over people, places, and things, and I can do what's important to me. I do my best. I've never gotten rich. I really wish I had gotten rich, and there are times when I, wish I was rich, but I haven't ever had. I've always had what I needed, and if I really look at it, I'm very blessed and very lucky. So, and I think my mother lived to be 89 years old, and so I think I've got a little while left on the planet. So I want to give back as much as I can, have as much fun as possible, and meet all these lovely young people like yourself. So.
Well, I'm honored. I mean, just to be able to speak with you. I'd love to hear another song if you'd like to play another song.
Sure. I'll play a song. Actually, this is a fun one. This is on the album, the new album, and the new album is called Stops Time, and it is available on all the platforms and all that sort of nonsense. And also, guys, if you want to give me money for my tour of Germany, which starts April 20th, I'm going to be touring Northern Germany, barring acts of God and the creek don't rise. We'll see what happens. I'm supposed to go. And I was booked 2 years ago with this lovely young artist named Catherine Ashby, who's a British artist, and you can check her out, Catherine with a C. She's on Instagram, and she's phenomenal. And we're going to tour. We're calling it the Transatlantic Hearts Tour, across the oceans and across the generations. And so we're going to be doing a little tour over there, but music is expensive, and we don't make the money back anymore. I mean, I can't just make a record and sell it and get money. It doesn't work like that anymore. So anybody who wants to support me, you can go on, there's a tip jar or whatever on my website, and, all that kind of stuff, because I believe in supporting live music, and it's
absolutely,
so if you
so
can,
do we. Yes.
Yeah, and for all your artist friends, we're all, none of us have been able to work for a long time, so help us out. Do whatever you can. Go to live shows. We will say thank you. Because we like to do what we kind of can't help it. We do what we do anyway. But it isn't a hobby. It's a job. And it's a vocation. And so I really believe in supporting live arts, and I do it. I support all my friends who are touring artists. I'm a little long in the tooth for that. I don't do a lot of touring, but going to Germany is fun. I toured Ireland. That was exciting. And
wow.
Anyway, so this song is about being on the road, and it's called 3 Songs from Home. So here's how it goes. This road is so familiar, and I know every curve. Last time I left here, I was crying. Coming back is taking some nerve, and now I'm 3 songs from home. Which ones will it be? Sad-eyed lady like a rolling stone, and let it be. That ought to get me home. I'm finally tired of running, looking for that perfect place. Stop dreaming dreams about tomorrow. I'll look for answers in your face. And now I'm 3 songs from home. Where will this all end? Both sides now, and the parting glass blowing in the wind. That ought to get me home. This road is so familiar, and I know every curve. Last time I left here, I was crying. Coming back is taking some nerve, but now I'm 3 songs from home. Coming back to you. Under the boardwalk, up on the roof, the way you do the things you do. That ought to get me home. That ought to get me home. That's 3 songs from home. It's fun. I wrote that one when I was in COVID times, so that was another one I wrote. So hope you like it.
What a great
Thanks.
I love it. It's so much different than the last song in like an upbeat way, you know.
Well, I was also lucky enough to, on this new album, Bruce Brown, who played for Charlie Daniels for 30 years, does a lot of the extra guitars and mandolin and stuff on the record, and he played with me. He was phenomenal. Also, Ross Sermons, he's in New Zealand, but he played bass. So Gary Gordon does my produce. He helps co-produce the record along with Carrie Estrin, my manager, and we've had a really good time. And I wanted to just mention too is the part about the intuition. I mean, I have been teaching intuition for 25 years with my friend Nina Gibson, who lives up in Virginia. She lives in Fairfax. And she is a trained shaman, and we do a course called Intuition Journey. And I really do believe that the intuitive component is how I was able to get out of my own way, to have these, to really learn to go through the doors that were still opening. Because for most women my age, they feel like the doors are shut, that they're invisible, that they can't be seen anymore. And I just was able to get through and because of the intuitive work that I do. And I just want to let people know that I do consulting on that also with Nina, and sometimes we do workshops and things. But I really believe that's the reason I was able, when the time came for me to start to make records again and do all this, to not be afraid and to not feel invisible and to be really present as an elder. Because I believe in being a crone and being an elder, that we have not only a right but an obligation to help the world, and we're in a great position. Older women are in good position right now to be of service to women like you and to the planet.
Yes, yes.
I mean, 9/11 wasn't my first rodeo. I mean, I went through Kennedy,
and it wasn't the last.
It wasn't the last. And so that's the other hope that I bring, is that there's perspective with age. And people think, oh, well, it's awful, but it really isn't. It's the most productive time is your 60s and 70s. I mean, if you're doing it right, you can be incredibly productive because your kids are grown. You're not having to do all that. When you got toddlers at home, because you've got a baby, and it's hard, and that's where your energy goes. I was a mom, and I loved it, but now I can put the energy back into the planet, into the larger, and I can hold sacred space for the larger community, because I don't have to hold it right now for my toddler and give her a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I'm
so glad that you're saying this, not only so that young women can hear this, the young women who are listening, mm-hmm. or who will listen, and who follow you, who listen to you as an artist, but also as you say, as a crone, as in a position of now, mm-hmm. as you would call it in tarot, the high priestess, right?
Absolutely.
So you can pass down the wisdom. Mm-hmm. But because in our culture, like you say, there's a disconnect between the young women and the older women, and almost pitted against each other, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, because the deal is that you all are amazing. You're evolutionary. You've moved forward. I love what's become of younger women, how you all are doing, but we have the advantage of pre-internet,
right?
Scale and space, so we can pause longer, and that is
and be like, I don't have to respond to you for a second. You
exactly.
Can wait.
Exactly, and you can just.
But also, just mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
and
you
then
go ahead.
I was just going to say, culturally speaking, it's so important for the elders, not just the women, but the men, all, however you want to identify, the elders, to share their stories, so that in times hopefully we're rising out of it now, and it seems to be so, but in times like what we just went through in the past couple years, where mm-hmm. it feels like, I know that that you got it a lot as a young kid in different ways with, I'm sure you remember like bomb drills and things like that. But I grew up with like, at any time the ocean's going to be completely empty and we're going to all melt, like with global warming and like it just impending doom. And not to say that that isn't happening, but just it can be, it can freeze you and make it so immobilize you so you cannot do anything and you don't want to do anything and you're very depressed. And I feel like we need the guidance of elders in so many ways to inspire us and to keep us going and to share, that, if you don't learn your history, then you repeat it. If you don't talk about the
and
past.
one of your sponsors is Kara Kutro. Kara?
Yes,
she's a good friend
she's
of
my
mine.
favorite.
Also, I love her, and she's helped me in the past with things that I've needed help with, and I've helped her. And I really believe in, like I said, that I'm working with a young artist in England, and this whole across the generations, transatlantic hearts, because it really makes a difference for me to know my daughter is 28, she's queer, she's out there, she's amazing, and figuring out how to function, and she helps me to know like how to talk, like the they business and all that. I don't want to do it wrong. I want to learn. And that's the thing is that sometimes we do get it wrong. Older folk, I mean, and with the internet.
Everybody does.
That's what they tell me. Everybody does, but I'm like, oh no, you don't get it. Because I get stuck so far before you do. And things that you take for granted. Now, I was a telephone person. I could talk you off the forever. I'm great at it. But that went away. So, I'm not so good with the texting. I do, but it doesn't mean as much to me. My heart isn't there. So you all can help me and help the elders by making it, like smoothing the path for us, as far as artificial intelligence and support that you have had your whole life.
Right.
We haven't had our whole life. And we can help you by helping with the pause and by helping with the idea that what appears to be climactic is really episodic.
I love that. Wow.
And that's just true. So, this is the kind of stuff that when I work with someone to help you, I can only tell you what I did, and it worked. And I do a lot of things that are healthy, and it allowed me to let my music soar. And also, people like to play with me that are famous and stuff. So Ronnie McCory and Frank Sullivan in the Dirty Kitchen, these guys played with me on my records. And I'm like, how cool is that? And they're younger and they didn't mind. They play. But look at Dolly Parton. Oh, my God. That woman's amazing. She's amazing. And so you don't have to become less than amazing with age.
Thank you. That's, because no, really, I know it sounds silly to say, especially, but it's like I'm 33. I'm going to be 33. Actually, I'm going to have my palindrome birthday coming up here because I was born March 3rd. And so I'm going to be 33 here on March 3rd.
Awesome.
But, it's like I've had my son and, I'm growing my family, but I'm also trying to grow this business. And what I care about very much is talking to artists like yourselves and telling their stories and sharing their stories and sharing their songs. And it's important to hear from a veteran like yourself that, there's more to it. You can keep going. You don't have to,
and the other thing too is that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. That's an old saying that I find very funny, him or her, tell God your plans, because it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go.
Right.
But what you have to do is you have to do the footwork. Yes, I do have to practice. I don't practice a lot, but I do practice. And when I learned, get your skill set down. Always, and right now I'm back on piano because I haven't done it in a while, and I really love that I'm learning it again, learning new skills, staying fresh, staying vibrant,
It's so good for your brain.
It's so good for your brain, and that's the other thing is that it prevents like Alzheimer's and stuff like that.
Right.
I also
it's the right and the left talking to each other.
Yeah, and I also believe in staying on trend in terms of keeping up with what is going on. And for me, of course, it's fashion because I love fashion, but like finding out, what people. So that I'm not mutton dressed up as lamb. That's an old saying too, which I love. And you don't want to be mutton dressed up as lamb. But the point is that I don't want to be stuck in a decade that is no longer current, or that I'm no longer present in today, because I believe in living in the moment and living in today. You don't have yesterday and you don't have tomorrow. You only have today, one day at a time. That's the way I live my life. It doesn't mean you don't plan. You do plan. It doesn't mean you don't work on hard things. Of course you do. But you recognize that the results are not necessarily up to you, because other things can happen. I'm planning on going to Germany, but Putin is looking at invading Russia. Let's see.
Right.
I may not get to go. I didn't get to go because of COVID. I was supposed to go last year. Couldn't go. Okay. I got a vaccination because I believe in vaccinations. There are people that don't. I don't know who they are or why they think these things. I also don't understand how health has become political. I don't understand that. But it has, and so you have to accept people coming from where they're coming. You don't have to put up with things that you don't, that aren't safe or whatever. I'm not talking about that, but I'm saying, learning how to be wise means staying out of stuff that doesn't belong to you, and staying and being clear about your own opinions. But I don't need you to believe what I believe. That's kind of
right.
Do that.
Like you can believe what you want to believe while safely keeping a distance, so to speak.
Exactly.
You don't have
but
to,
it's also that I haven't ever found somebody yelling at me to make me change my mind. Therefore,
or you yelling at somebody
or
else.
me yelling at somebody else. It just doesn't change their mind. And so that's part of what I'm really clear about, is that if I can find a path in where we can make inroads into understanding one another, positions like that, then perhaps everybody can start thinking like I do. Just kidding. But of course you want them to believe what you believe, because you want to believe you're on the right path. And but I've often been wrong. That's another thing. I've often been wrong. And so I want to stay open to new ideas, and be aware that I don't know everything. And that's one of the biggest things about long-term recovery, is I have realized that I know very little, and that's fine with me. So anyway, this was fun, honey. I had a good time.
I've had so much fun talking to you today, Brooksie. I want to ask you, can I ask you at least two more questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. One, I want to ask you how people, they can get in touch with you on brooksiewells.com if they want to. You said you're teaching the intuition and music class. You talked about that a little bit, but if you want to
well, what's happening is that I just did a master class in England with a group of older artists, and it was on, it's called Music, Intuition, and Reinvention. And it's really my story about how I reinvented myself as an older artist, and how I used intuition and the paths, the intuitive, to do it, which is relying on guidance rather than relying on intellect. And that's kind of how that works. And what I have been doing, Nina Gibson is my partner in teaching intuition workshops, which we have been doing for 25 years. We taught at the Chautauqua Institute for years. So we will be we just did one with Unity of Fairfax, as a matter of fact, up there in Virginia. We did a Zoom one with them. And we've done them at Massage Therapy Institute in Maryland. We've done them all over the place. It's actually, you can get, what are those things, CEUs or whatever those, you can get credit for it, for the class that we
yes.
For the intuition for massage therapists. But it's mainly
what kind of tools?
What I'm looking at, if other artists or other older, especially older artists who are looking to come back into the business, or they're retiring and they want to reinvent themselves, or they're changing jobs and they want to reinvent themselves, how to use your intuitive to help you get there quicker and easier is kind of what I'm working on. And we have some techniques and things you can do to make it easier for you. Plus, I also do songwriting. I do a thing, I'm a song doctor, where if you're having trouble getting your song written and you want some help, I don't write it for you, but I help you to focus your music so you can get there better, quicker. I've done that for a couple of artists out on the West Coast, and or help you find producers. Or I know everybody knows Brooksie, hashtag everybody EKB. Everybody knows Brooksie. So if you need to know, well, how do I get it out? How do I do this? Should I do it myself? That kind of stuff. I do that, and I do charge for that stuff. It depends on the person
Of
and the
course.
situation.
Yeah.
But if you're interested, you can go to my website, or you can go to Instagram, Brooksie Wells, or to Facebook, Brooksie Wells. I'm the only Brooksie Wells in America, so you kind of, if you Google me, you get me. And so that's kind of what, and I'm on Twitter and all that. I'm not on
Excellent.
TikTok, but I should be, but I'm not. I'm not on TikTok.
I'm not either.
I
And
know,
I'm not
and I
on
think
Twitter,
we
right?
should do it because it's getting to be a thing. So,
It is. Yeah,
but I'm
that's
so
true.
fed up with Instagram. I can't even deal with it anymore because all it is filters, and I love filters because filters make me look 30 years younger. I love that. I mean, why should I be mad about that? And so I put them up and I use them. It's really fun. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is awful." I'm like, "Well, actually, when you're my age, it's kind of fun." We have a good time with it. So anyway, so that's it. And
I use them.
BrooksieWells.com is my website. And you can email me from there if you're interested in
Okay.
doing some work with me, or if you want to be part of a workshop. We will be putting one together, and I'll probably be promoting that. I have a group. It's called Everybody Knows Brooksie. If you come on my Facebook, you can join the group, and that'll be fun. So love to have y'all.
Yay. Excellent. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
And then the last question I want to ask you is advice for, now I don't want you to give too much away because like you said, you know, people pay you for this. This is part of your livelihood. But like we've so many times throughout this interview spoken about the changes that have occurred in music. And really right now, the music business is in kind of a not very great place right now. I think we could probably agree on that. It's very difficult in a lot of ways. Well, it's always been difficult for talented artists to rise above, right? You know that. You're talented and you've been fighting it your whole life, right? Or fighting for yourself your whole life. But specifically when you talked about how, and I just spoke with a guy the other day, Tanner Carlton, about this. Artists, especially musicians, are not taken seriously as, you know, that role as an occupation. How, in your, you know, your years of experience, how do you think we as artists or we as a community can change that, can work to change that, to have it be considered a legitimate profession more so?
Well, I think that this has always been a problem. It has to do with the issue nowadays of patronage, of evolving. It's almost a medieval concept. In the olden days, artists had to have patrons to look after them. What has happened because of the internet, music is basically free to receive. That's just the way it is. And anybody can get what they want. But it's not free to make. It cost me, I've spent over $100,000 on my last 5 records. And I've maybe made 20. You know, I mean, let's be honest, as a return on, so it's a very poor return on my investment. However, for specifically from music, now I've made money other ways. I've had other income. But the point is, painters have always had this problem. I mean, this is just, musicians have just joined the ranks of potters and painters who, you know, have always had to have other jobs. And in any niche music, like for example, in the blues, John Jackson, he's from your area, he's from Rappahannock, and he was a grave digger all his life. He always had a job as a grave digger, as well as being a musician, because niche music didn't ever pay very much. Bluegrass, blues, you know, specific jazz, specific niches. You really, there's not a way. There's a great book by Bernice Johnson Reagan, who was in Sweet Honey in the Rock. Do you know that band, Sweet Honey in the Rock?
Yes.
They're amazing.
Yes.
And she wrote this thing about, she wrote a chapter in her book. I think the book is, I can't remember the name of this particular book, but she wrote a chapter called The Part-Time Professional. And this helped me tremendously because what she said, it doesn't matter if you have to do this part-time. Your level of professionalism has to be such that you're 100% professional no matter what. And part of that comes from, you know, they had like 20 women in that band sometimes, and you know, they were mostly women of color, and sometimes this one lady would have to go, and they had kids, they'd have to go work at the dry cleaner and then go play at the Kennedy Center. You know, literally, it was that kind of a shift. But you have to maintain your level of professionalism at all times, and that's real important, because then your integrity stays true. As far as getting other people to do it, you have to ask for the money. which I am really bad at. So I'm really glad you brought this up because I am trying my best to do that. I have been, like I said, very privileged and very looked after. So I haven't needed a lot of money and I've been able to get away with not doing all the things, but do what it takes. Like if you're an ASCAP, go on ASCAP and sign up for the thing that you get paid for it. Do all the things that are necessary technically. And that's where we older folks run into problems because I can't necessarily manage the technology of how to get paid for your work. Because so much of it's just about getting paid. Is that as people in our culture value what is expensive or what costs money. They don't value things that don't cost money. Now, that isn't right or wrong. It's just the way it is. So if you take money and stop making it bad and just make it how we value and then put it out there, then things can start to shift for you. They have for me. I'm debt free now. That took forever. I'm 69 for God's sake. You know what I mean? It took forever because I all kinds of things. But today I actually believe that I have value, that I am valuable. How valuable is your work? Find a way to make it valuable and look at the markets that are available to you and see where the value is, see where it's being valued. So like what's happening on Spotify, there's a lot of problems with Spotify right now, but Bandcamp, there isn't problems with Bandcamp. They're paying people. So now, here's the thing. I'm on Spotify. All my records are on Spotify. And I don't want to come off Spotify because I'm not like Joni Mitchell and I'm not James Taylor, who could come, or whoever it was. It was Jackson Brown. Because they have plenty of money.
And Neil Young.
Yeah, but that's where people see my music is on Spotify.
So you want to get it out there.
Yeah, and so figuring out how to maintain integrity and get it out there. Because it's all about integrity. The key to everything is integrity. I mean, I keep my word. I do what I say I'm going to do. That's how, that's the thing. A lot of musicians don't. So, learn how to keep your word. Don't promise what you cannot deliver. These are all things that I tell people I work with, recognize what's really there. Don't pretend. I have friends that are really in big industries in film and everything. And they'll tell me the truth. I had this great film idea, and then my girlfriend who's in the business, she's like, nope, won't go right now. Won't fly. And she just tells me the truth. And, okay, so I don't waste my time. So I really think it's about looking, and I'm going to promote a woman who is who I took a class with. Her name is Lynz Crichton, Lynz. She is a British singer-songwriter, folk singer, and she does an incredible class on how to promote yourself on Twitter and all those kinds of things so that you can make a living. And she makes a living. So that's, and I also took a course with a guy named Tiamo, who is another phenomenal, he does keynote concerts and stuff like that. And he has managed to kind of sidestep the music business and do music in corporate business and stuff like that. And he's made a fortune. He's done real well. So there are ways to do it, but you have to kind of be open to it shifting to change.
Whatever door opens for you. Is that your father said?
Right. And explore and research and ask. Talk to as many people as you can. And then if you have a good product, my final word of advice is tell everybody, because you never know who you're talking to. I mean, we could be doing this show and somebody could be on here. This happened to me the other day. My girlfriend, Catherine, called me up from New York. She'd been on a call with, Zoom. She's an actress for doing some narrative work. And this guy, blah, blah, blah. She introduced him to me. And now I've been made the music supervisor of his documentary.
Wow.
I know.
Congratulations.
Tell
That's
everybody.
So cool.
You just never know, so it's cool. Anyway. You're adorable, by the way. Just thought I'd say that.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, this is fun. And say hi to John Hallberg. Do you know John?
Oh, yes, I know John. He came on my show.
He's a former beau of mine. He's a fabulous guy, and we've been friends for a million years. And tell John,
are you going to come out and see his Dulcimer Museum?
Absolutely,
He's working very hard
absolutely. And I'm hoping to come play up there. I'm going to be up there in March So I'm going to see. I would love to play. If you can get me a gig, I would love
I can
that.
get you gigs.
Oh, you're
I can
awesome,
get you some
honey.
gigs. I've
Then
got
we'll talk after the
connections
show,
in
and I
Culpeper and Front Royal.
because I'm going to be doing a show in Fairfax at Nina's. We're doing a house concert there, and but I'd like to do a couple because I'm preparing for my tour. So I'd like to do a couple of concert style, gigs.
Yeah.
Get ready, and so if that would be awesome. We'll talk after the show. Okay, you can
Yes,
call me and
let's
tell
talk.
Kara and everybody that I said hi. And I just love I love that area and that song, The Mead Maker and the Stonecutter's Wife. That's really about John Hoberg. So anyway. It is.
A little
'Cause
inside
I thought,
scoop for the
mead
listeners.
maker, stonecutter. Come on, what century are we in? All true, and and in the 2010s, not in the 1800s. So that's even funnier. So crack me up.
But it's such a cool time to live in that way because you can access all the times, right? All genres are available now.
Absolutely. Amazing.
Brooksie, thank you so much. I'm
Oh,
so pleased to have you on Rappahannock Radio, and I hope to stay in touch.
Please do, and I'm not kidding. I'm coming up in March, so we need to book a date. Okay, honey?
Yes.
All right. Good to see y'all, and thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
That ought to get me home. I'm finally tired of running, looking for that perfect place. Stop dreaming dreams about tomorrow. I'll look for answers in